Our anime begins with Hyunju being relentlessly bullied by his classmates. They mock him, forcing him to imitate a dog's movements, laughing at his humiliation. One of the bullies grows even angrier and strikes him, sneering, "You're not even good at acting like an animal. You're just a useless pig." The torment continues as they beat him up once more. After school, Hyunju returns home, visibly shaken by the day's events. He sits in silence, lost in his thoughts, before deciding to make himself something to eat. Just then, his mother comes in and gently tells him, "Relax, I'll cook for you." She prepares a meal and places it in front of him, but he doesn't react. His mind is elsewhere. The weight of his daily suffering crushes him, yet he feels powerless to change anything. Finally, he musters the courage to speak. "Mum, I want to transfer to another school," he says. But he doesn't reveal the real reason. Instead, he lies, saying, "The other students are so much smarter than me. I just can't keep up." His mother immediately refuses. "That's not possible," she tells him. "You know our financial situation. If we move, the expenses will increase, and I won't be able to afford your education." Frustrated, Hyunju snaps. He yells, lashes out at whatever is in front of him, and storms out. The next day at school, he accidentally bumps into a girl who is too absorbed in her phone to watch where she's going. Despite it being her fault, she curses at him. To make things worse, one of his usual tormentors happens to walk by. Seeing the situation, the bully assumes Hyunju was harassing her. "Take this ball and wait for me in the playground," the bully orders. Once they're outside, another student starts filming as they turn the situation into a cruel game. "Whoever hits Hyunju with the ball first wins," they declare. The game begins. Some of them kick the ball with all their strength, forcing Hyunju to dodge. But then, one of them launches the ball at an impossible speed. Before he can react, it slams into his face. Enraged, one of the bullies rushes over and punches him. "You weren't supposed to dodge my shot," he growls before knocking Hyunju to the ground. But the beating doesn't stop there. The bully pulls him up and continues to land blow after blow, taking pleasure in his suffering. At that moment, Hyunju's mother arrives at the school to take care of some paperwork. She immediately notices what's happening and furiously confronts the bullies. But to her shock, Hyunju stops her. "This is just a joke, Mom," he says, forcing a smile. "They're my friends. It's nothing." As if being beaten in public wasn't humiliating enough, he chooses to pretend it's all just harmless fun. His mother, however, isn't fooled. In that moment, she realizes the real reason why he wanted to transfer. That evening, she waits for him at home. When he arrives, she asks him to sit with her. "I saw everything today," she says softly. "I know none of this is your fault. That's why I've made my decision. I'm transferring you to a new school." Hyunju stares at her, shocked. "There's one more thing," she continues. "You'll be living on your own from now on. I'll send you money at the beginning of every month so you can continue your studies. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." Hearing this, Hyunju is overwhelmed with emotion. Tears stream down his face. He hates that his mother has to take on an even heavier burden because of him. But deep down, he knows this is his chance to start over. As he arrives in his new city, he clenches his fists and makes a silent vow to himself. "This is my fresh start. A new school, new people, a new life. I won't let anyone push me around ever again." Hyunju finally arrives at his new apartment. It's small, messy, and barely livable, but to him, anything is better than the nightmare he left behind. He drops his bags and steps out to collect the rest of his belongings. As he walks through the streets, he accidentally bumps into a girl. To his surprise, she immediately apologizes. "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was looking for my friend," she says. For the first time in his life, someone treats him with respect. Hyunju feels an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. Happiness. But just as they're talking, the girl's friend arrives, looking suspicious. "Hey, is this guy bothering you?" "No, it was my fault. I wasn't looking where I was going," the girl replies casually. Hyunju notices something. Her friend didn't instantly yell at him or look down on him. He takes advantage of the situation and simply stares at the guy with a grin. The friend frowns. "Why are you laughing?" Hyunju smirks. "Because I bumped into your friend." In his mind, he's making an impression, trying to form a personality for himself. But his response only fuels the guy's anger. In an instant, the guy grabs Hyunju and starts beating him, his fury exploding with every punch. The crowd around them doesn't intervene. Instead, they pull out their phones and start recording, entertained by his suffering. Later, Hyunju stumbles back to his apartment, battered and humiliated. He curls up in the corner of his room, reliving the moment over and over in his head. His phone buzzes. When he checks it, his stomach drops. His face is plastered all over social media. The comments are brutal, filled with insults about his appearance, his existence. "What did I do to deserve this?" he mutters to himself. "What's my crime? Just being born like this?" Tears well up in his eyes, and before he knows it, he cries himself to sleep. But something strange happens. When he wakes up, he feels different. Something is off. His entire body feels lighter, unfamiliar. He stumbles to the bathroom, confusion gripping him. Then he looks in the mirror and freezes. The reflection staring back at him isn't his, it's someone else's. Someone tall, strong, jawline sharp, muscles defined, features so perfect it's almost unreal. Panic surges through him. He rushes back to his bed, only to find his real body still lying there, fast asleep. His heart pounds. This has to be a dream. He shakes his own body, desperate to wake himself up. Suddenly, his real body stirs, eyes fluttering open. Hyunju stares in shock. He's looking at himself from the outside. And that's when he understands. If he falls asleep in one body, he wakes up in the other. He glances back at his new reflection, taking it all in. He's taller, stronger. Every inch of him radiates beauty, power. It's like a dream come true. The next day, he puts on his uniform and heads to his new school. The moment he walks in, the entire class falls silent. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is he even real? He looks like a movie star. Where did this guy come from? The teacher introduces him to the class, and he confidently steps forward. "My name is Hyunju," he says, his voice steady. As he scans the room, his eyes land on two familiar faces, his bully from yesterday and the girl from the street. His heart clenches for a moment, but then he remembers. They don't know who he is. The bully looks at him, completely unaware, and smiles. "Hey, I'm Jin. Nice to meet you." Hyunju smirks internally. This is going to be interesting. Jin watched Hyunju with narrowed eyes. From the moment he stepped into the classroom, all the girls were captivated by him, including Jin's own friend. The attention Hyunju received irritated him to no end. Meanwhile, Hyunju finished his classes and decided to go for a walk. He marveled at his new body, how light it felt, how effortlessly he moved. "I need to get used to walking in this body so I don't embarrass myself in front of others," he thought. But as he walked, his balance faltered, and he nearly tripped. In an attempt to recover, he twisted his body mid-air, flipping in a way that looked almost intentional, like a martial arts stunt. The people nearby gasped. "Did you see that? That was insane. He's got crazy skills." Hyunju blinked in surprise. "Wait, how did I even do that?" He grinned, suddenly exhilarated, and started running through the streets, enjoying the way his body moved with effortless grace. The next day, he goes to school, but feels exhausted and can't wait for class to end. He falls asleep and wakes up in his original body. He tries to go back to sleep, but can't, so he stays in his original body, until this girl woke him up and said, "I'm sorry if I scared you, but I don't want you to get in trouble." No, don't worry," he said. "I'm the one who's sorry for waking up that way." After school, he headed to a local shop, hoping to find a part-time job. The moment the shop owner saw him, his eyes lit up. "A guy this handsome wants to work for me," My shop's about to be flooded with customers, especially girls. Hyunju opened his mouth to speak, but the owner didn't let him. You're hired. No need for an interview. Wait, Hyunju said quickly. You misunderstood. I'm not looking for a job for myself. I'm asking on behalf of my friend. The owner frowned. Oh, well, I'll hire your friend on one condition. You have to come here and shop regularly. Hyunju hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right. That night, he switched back to his original body and returned to the shop. The moment the owner laid eyes on him, his expression soured. Wait, you're the friend? Hyunju nodded. The owner scoffed. No, you won't be good at this job. Hyunju clenched his fists, but remained calm. I know the price of everything in this store. The owner raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? Then tell me the price of... He rattled off a list of obscure items, expecting Hyunju to fail. Without hesitation, Hyunju recited the exact prices. The owner's jaw dropped. Well, I'll be damned. Fine, I'll hire you. But I'm paying you less than I would anyone else. Hyunju knew it was unfair, but he had no choice. I'll take it. For a while, things went smoothly at the shop. Hyunju focused on his work, relieved to have a sense of normalcy. But then, a group of students walked in. They were from his school. They sauntered up to the counter. Hey, we need some cigarettes. Hyunju frowned. I can't sell to you. You're underage. Come on, man. One of them smirked. Just give them to us. No one's going to find out. No, Hyunju said firmly. Unbeknownst to him, Jin was waiting for those very students outside. When they didn't come out, he walked in, only to see Hyunju behind the counter. Jin's eyes darkened. He smirked and casually grabbed a few items off the shelves. I'll be taking these. No need to pay. Hyunju froze. Jin leaned in closer, lowering his voice. And I'll forget that you were eyeing my girl. Hyunju's heart pounded, but his body refused to move. He wanted to fight back, but fear kept him silent. Jin's eyes flickered to the name tag on Hyunju's uniform. His expression darkened. Hyunju, he muttered. It was the same name as the new transfer student, the one all the girls had been fawning over. His blood boiled. He threw down the items in his hands, his jaw tightening. This name pisses me off, he spat. You two, you both dared to look at my girl. That means you need to be taught a lesson. Before Hyunju could react, Jin's fist crashed into his face. The beating was brutal. He felt every punch, every kick, his body crumbling under the force. But it didn't stop there. Jin's gang took it even further, snapping humiliating pictures of him to use as blackmail. If you snitch, Jin sneered, holding up the phone. These go public. Hyunju lay there, broken and humiliated. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he bit his lip, swallowing them down. Why? What did I do to deserve this? What's my crime? Just existing. That night, his mother called. Her voice, though tired, was filled with warmth. How are you, sweetheart? How's school? Hyunju clenched his fists, forcing his voice to stay steady. Don't worry, Mom. Everything's under control. She let out a relieved sigh. That's good to hear. And his mother is actually very tired because she worked an extra job to send him more expenses, and it seems that the lives of the two of them were very difficult. The next day at school, whispers filled the hallways. Jin and his gang were bragging about what they did, laughing as they showed the photos to other students. Hyunju clenched his fists. His handsome face was cold, his eyes glinting with something dark as he watched Jin's gang mock Hyunju. Then one of them sneered, "A guy like that?" His mom probably dumped him in the streets and, before he could finish, the handsome student slammed his hands onto his desk, standing up. His voice rang through the room. You call yourselves men? Ganging up on a weak kid who can't even fight back. Pathetic. Jin's head snapped toward him, his eyes burning with rage. You got a problem, Jin growled. You've been pissing me off for a while now. Come on then, let's settle this. He lunged forward, but before his fist could connect, The handsome student stepped aside effortlessly. Jin froze. It wasn't that his punch missed, it was that Hyunju dodged it. How? Jin threw another punch. Again, Hyunju evaded it with ease, his body moving instinctively. Time seemed to slow. Every movement was clear, every shift in Jin's posture, every slight twitch of his muscles. Hyunju could see it all. Years of being beaten had trained his body. Even if he had never fought back before, he had learned one thing: how to anticipate an attack. Gasps filled the classroom as he dodged blow after blow, his expression unreadable. Jin grew more enraged, attacking from every angle, but no matter how fast he moved, Hyunju was faster. And then, everything came flooding back. His mother, working herself to exhaustion. Jin's gang humiliating him, laughing as they hurt him. All the suffering he had endured while trapped in his old body. Enough. Jin swung again. This time, Hyunju didn't dodge. He caught the punch mid-air. The room fell silent. Jin's eyes widened as Hyunju tightened his grip. Then, in one swift motion, Hyunju pulled Jin forward, then drove his fist straight into his gut. Jin's body crumpled. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air, unable to move. Silence filled the classroom. Hyunju took a deep breath, staring down at Jin. The rush of adrenaline, the feeling of finally standing up for himself. It was overwhelming. Without another word, he turned and walked away. But news of the fight spread like wildfire. Every gang in school heard about the new kid who had taken down Jin with a single punch. "We need to put this guy in his place," someone muttered. "Find out who he really is." Meanwhile, at the shop where Hyunju worked, a nervous boy ran inside, his face pale with fear. He grabbed a handful of items and dashed toward the exit. Hyunju instinctively moved to stop him, but he is surprised to see the guy joining the group of kids who were beating him up. They're bullying this guy too, and not just that, they're making him steal whatever they want. As soon as the gang spotted Hyung, they turned their attention to him. They didn't just beat him, they forced him to transfer the blows onto the other boy, recording everything for their amusement. But just as things took a darker turn, someone called out. The moment the bullies saw who it was, their faces turned pale. Fear gripped them. A tall figure approached, his presence alone enough to make them step back. He grabbed one of them by the collar, his grip like iron. "You think this is fun?" His voice was cold, filled with contempt. The gang member whimpered, trying to break free, but the man tightened his hold, his eyes dark with fury. "If I ever see any of you pulling this again," he growled, "you won't get off so easy." His words sent a chill down their spines. They didn't need to be told twice. Without hesitation, they turned and ran, terrified. Hyung exhaled in shock, realizing who had just saved him. This was Basco, the strongest student in the entire school. A man feared and respected. He's kind and always helps the needy, and gets upset with anyone who approaches the weak and those who don't know how to defend themselves. Then they thank him for what he did. But Basco asks them about a new transfer to the school, and he means Hyung, and this is because Ji had beaten Jill with one hit. He tells them if they know him, tell him that if Basco sees you, he won't have mercy on you. After he hears the words, he doesn't understand what made him hate him so much, but he tells him, "Okay." Hyung stood frozen, his heart pounding. What did I do? Why does he hate me already? The next day, he sat in class, still replaying Basco's words in his head. Then, Jin's friends approached him, but instead of hostility, they wore nervous smiles. "Hey, Hyung, right?" One of them cleared his throat. "Listen, we saw what you did to Jin. That was impressive." Another nodded. "Yeah, so, wanna hang out with us?" Hyung raised an eyebrow. "Are they trying to befriend me now? Just because they're scared?" Still, he didn't reject them. They chatted for a while until suddenly, the room tensed. Basco had entered. The moment he saw Hyung with Jin's gang, his expression darkened. His presence alone was enough to silence the room. He walked straight up to Hyung, and without a word, grabbed his shoulder. A crushing force locked him in place. Gasps echoed around them. "That's Basco's move," someone whispered. "No one's ever broken free from that grip." Hyung's heart pounded. He could feel the power in Basco's hold. It was like a vice. But he wasn't about to let himself be humiliated. He gathered all his strength, focused every muscle in his arm. And then, with a sharp motion, he broke free. The room went silent. Everyone stared, stunned. He escaped Basco's grip. Basco narrowed his eyes, flexing his hand where Hyung had forced himself free. Hyung met his gaze. "I thought you were someone who helped people," he said coldly. "Guess I was wrong." Basco's expression flickered. Anger, then something unreadable. Basco exhaled sharply, then turned away. "You're lucky," he muttered before leaving. Hyung noticed something then. Basco's hand. It was trembling slightly. His grip had been so strong that even breaking free had injured him. Jin's friends, who had watched the whole thing unfold, were thrilled. That was insane. "Bro, you actually got out of Basco's move." They clapped him on the back, practically adopting him into their group on the spot. That evening, they invited him out for dinner, and for the first time, Hyung let himself relax. They joked around, laughing and enjoying each other's company. It seemed like he had let go of the thoughts that had been troubling him and realized he had been walking down the wrong path. As they were sitting together, one of them pulled out his phone and showed a picture of Young in his real body, getting beaten up. They all laughed and mocked him. Hyung got furious, grabbed the phone, and smashed it. But suddenly, he passed out. This was the first time he had ever drunk alcohol. When he woke up in his other body, he felt extremely anxious. He was terrified that he wouldn't be able to wake up again. In a panic, he decided to sleep in that body, hoping things would return to normal. But when he woke up again, nothing had changed. His body had not switched. Fear gripped him. What if his other body disappeared just as mysteriously as it had appeared? He quickly got dressed and ran to where his other body was. The moment he saw it still there, he finally felt relieved. Everything was just as he had left it. He hadn't vanished after all. Just then, Zayn asked him why he had come. "Are you here for revenge? Are you looking to settle the score?" Hyung shook his head quickly. No, I just came because Hyung, my roommate, called me to come get him from here." Jin and his friends were stunned by his response, but they assumed he was just some kind of servant. They allowed him to take Hyung away. As they were leaving, they passed by a strength testing machine. Curious, Jinny turned to Hyunju and said, "Don't let anyone bully you again. You're way stronger than you think." He then started teaching him some basic boxing moves, showing him how to channel all his strength into his fist. Then, he punched the machine and got the highest score, 892. Hyung was in awe. Damn, that was impressive. Hyunju, excited, decided to try for himself. He followed all the steps carefully, gathered his strength, but completely missed the machine, punching the air instead. Embarrassed, he quickly walked away. The next day at school, Hyunju spotted the boy who had previously stolen from his store. His name was Ji Hyung. Instead of confronting him aggressively, he approached him calmly and spoke respectfully, unlike how the other students treated him. They ended up eating together. Ji Hyung was taken aback. Why was someone who looked like this treating him so nicely? He started to suspect that Hyunju was just like the others, planning to manipulate him and use him. Later that evening, after school, Hyung went home and was surprised to find his mother waiting for him. She had brought him some food and a few other things. However, since he was still in his other body, he momentarily forgot and almost called her Mom. He quickly corrected himself, saying, "I mean, like a mom, you know?" His mother looked at him curiously. "Who are you?" Thinking fast, he answered, "I'm Hyung Milu, your son's roommate. We live together to split expenses and save money." She then asked about her son, wondering why he was still asleep. Hyung explained, "He took on a night job. He works until midnight, which is why he's exhausted and needs to rest." Hearing this, his mother smiled with pride. Finally, he's learning to be responsible. But at the same time, a hint of sadness crossed her face. It's not his fault. It's mine. If only I had been able to provide everything he needed, he wouldn't have had to work so hard. She then invited Hyung to talk somewhere else so they wouldn't wake her son. They went to a small restaurant and sat down. She opened up about her struggles. My son used to be bullied a lot in school. I brought him here so he could start a new life. I pushed myself, took on multiple jobs, just to give him everything he needed. But there's one thing I can't do alone. I need you to protect him. Don't let anyone hurt him again. He's been through enough. Hyung was deeply moved. He thought back to all the moments they had shared. He clenched his fists and looked her in the eye. I won't let anyone bully him again. No one will ever lay a hand on him. I promise. His mother's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Meanwhile, Basco had been sitting nearby, overhearing everything. He clenched his jaw, struggling to hold back his emotions. In his mind, he was convinced that Hyung was just using the poor kid and his mother. After they finished talking, Hyung walked with her as she picked up used cardboard boxes to sell, her new job to make extra money. When she handed him some cash, she said, "This is for what I drank earlier." At first, he refused, but despite her struggles, she insisted. "I never take anything without giving something in return." Basco, watching from afar, was furious. He couldn't stand to see this happening. "I won't let this go on," he thought. "I have to get that woman's money back." He waited for the mother to leave, then approached Hyung. "Come with me to a quiet place where no one will hear you begging for help," he said. The guy smirked. "Why do you want to fight me? I didn't do anything to you." Basco didn't respond. He just said, "Give me back the money the old lady gave you." The guy was confused at first. He thought Basco was just like the other bullies, trying to steal from him. "No way, I won't let you." Basco attacked, but Hyung dodged his strikes effortlessly. "This guy's got real skill," Basco thought, surprised. But then, Basco landed a quick strike, cutting him slightly. Hyung got angry. He remembered the boxing techniques he had learned. Taking the same stance, he launched a powerful punch. It was lightning fast. It looked like it was over for Basco, but at the last second, Basco dodged, and before he could land another hit, he got counter-attacked by Hyung and collapsed. His body couldn't keep up. Just then, one of Basco's friends happened to be passing by. He saw Basco on the ground and rushed to help. He was shocked. How had this guy managed to take Basco down? Later, Basco went to the store where Hyung worked. He picked up some items and looked at Hyung with a strange expression. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I couldn't get your money back." Hyung had no idea what he was talking about. Before leaving, Basco gave him some advice. "Train harder. The strong and the weak both have the same 24 hours in a day. It's up to you to make the most of it. Don't let anyone walk over you again." His words hit Hyung hard. He started training seriously. One day, a girl walked in and saw him. He immediately got flustered and stopped what he was doing. She smiled, bought what she needed, and even got him an energy drink. "This will help you recover," she said kindly. Hyung was shocked. Why is she being so nice? Meanwhile, Basco's friends had found out what had happened. They were furious. Hyung had beaten one of them and left him on the ground. They couldn't believe it. Basco himself hadn't been seen at school since. He was too ashamed to show his face. They decided to take revenge. At school, Hyung noticed another kid being bullied, the same way he used to be. He couldn't stand by and watch. He stepped in and faced the bullies. They recognized him immediately and prepared to fight, but just then, a teacher arrived, forcing them to back off. Later, in the cafeteria, Hyung sat with his friend Jae and the bullied kid, whose name was Taki. He reassured him, "I know this isn't your fault, but don't worry, I'll protect you. Just one condition, you have to be my friend." Taki snapped, "We're nothing alike. I get beaten up every day. Every single day. I wish I could just die and be free from this nightmare. You're strong, you can fight back, but I can't. We'll never be friends." Hyung was shaken by his words. He silently got up and walked away. On the other hand, Basco's friends were in the same place, watching him. They said they were going to wait for him after school today and beat him up, but this guy overhears them. Later, his mother calls him. She tells him she's coming over so they can celebrate his birthday together and reassures him that she'll do everything he wishes for. However, he apologizes and tells her he has too much studying to do and won't be able to come. His mother notices that his voice sounds different and asks if he's sick, but he denies it. After the call, he leaves school to head home, but Basco's friends are waiting for him with weapons, ready to ambush him. Just as he's walking, he runs into a classmate, the same one who overheard Basco's friends talking about him earlier. This classmate hands him a bag with "Happy Birthday" written on it. The boy realizes that he must have overheard his call with his mother and figured out that today was his birthday. Inside the bag, there are brand name clothes, super expensive ones. Hyung initially refuses to accept them, but before he can even argue, the guy throws him the bag along with 20 others just like it and walks away. Meanwhile, Basco's gang had already been taken care of before they could even meet him. Turns out, the classmate had beaten them up by himself. Looks like he's not one to be messed with either, my friend. Hyung goes home, shocked by all the gifts he received. But he's even more stunned when he realizes that everything inside is from high-end luxury brands and costs a fortune. The next day at school, some students were sitting around, waiting for Hyung to arrive so they could make fun of him and his clothes, trying to humiliate him in front of everyone. But when Hyung walks in, he shocks them all. This time, he's wearing brand new, expensive outfits, completely different from usual. They ask him where he got these clothes from, and he tells them a friend gave them to him. Meanwhile, Taki goes to apply for a talent program where they hold auditions to select the best singer. But the bully who always harasses him is also there. He starts insulting him again, right up until his turn to audition. He steps in and sings, impressing everyone. But the judge overseeing the contest walks out as soon as he sees Taki, the last contestant. He refuses to even listen to him, saying they've already chosen the winner, then leaves. Taki walks away filled with unimaginable sadness. When he gets to school, his bully doesn't leave him alone. He approaches him in front of the classroom, humiliating him in front of everyone. "Someone like you doesn't even deserve to be compared to me," the bully sneers. "Did you really think they'd accept you?" He and his gang continue to beat him up. Later, Taki finds himself standing in front of a poster for a singing festival. This is a competition between bands, where only one team can win. He wants to apply, but after everything that's happened, his confidence is shattered. He heads to his grandmother's restaurant and finds that she stayed up late just to prepare everything he needed. He chats with her for a bit, but just then, the guys who beat him up walk by. They see his grandmother, and surprisingly, act respectfully in front of her. She offers them food, and they immediately accept. They eat until there's nothing left. After finishing, she gives them extra food to take home, saying, "Since you're Taki's friends, take this with you." However, as soon as they leave, they throw the food in front of her restaurant and insult both her and her cooking. Taki overhears them, feeling hurt but powerless. The next day at school, he's horrified to see that they wrote insults about his grandmother's restaurant on the walls. This is the hardest period of his life, each day worse than the last. In the cafeteria, the bullies force him to act like their personal servant, humiliating him in front of the whole school. But this time, things are different. Hyung is there. When he sees what's happening, he remembers his own past, when school was nothing but a nightmare, and he wished someone would wake him up from it. Hyung steps in and is shocked to see the same guy who took down Basco's entire gang standing behind the bullies. "Back off," the guy warns. "If you don't, you won't like what happens next. There are 3 of us and only 2 of you. You know who's going to win." But before he can finish, another voice chimes in. "Actually, we're 3 now." Just then, Basco himself shows up, looking as sharp as ever. The bullies are stunned. Basco looks at them and says, "You guys only came after Taki because he was weak and alone, huh? Well, guess what? I'm alone too. It's just me against the 3 of you. If you don't walk away now, I'll finish you off right here." The bullies freeze, terrified. They leave like scared chickens because they know Basco's reputation alone is enough to destroy them. But they're not done yet. They refuse to let Taki go without another beating. They wait for him after school, take him somewhere alone, and start beating him up senselessly. He can't take it anymore, clutching onto the notebook where he writes his song lyrics. He says, "As long as the dream is still here, I'm still here, and that's enough." But even that doesn't escape their cruelty. They tear it apart and throw it in his face, leaving him lying on the ground as he wipes away his tears. Meanwhile, Hyung is being punished for nearly starting a fight at the restaurant. He keeps cleaning, but he gets lost in his thoughts and starts singing a song he had written when he was in his original body. His voice is incredibly beautiful, and the lyrics are on a whole other level. No one else is around except for Taki, who had just fallen to the ground. The moment he hears the voice, he rushes to see who is shaking the entire place with their singing. He finds Hyung, who is completely embarrassed and flustered. He has never sung in front of anyone before and is afraid his voice might be bad. Taki speaks to him, saying, "Your voice is unreal. The moment I heard you sing, I felt my heart move. With a voice like yours, you'd win any competition. Why don't we apply for the festival? I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I never found someone to stand by me and encourage me. Let's form a team." He finally gains confidence and says, "Let's do this." The next day, Hyung visits Taki's house to go through the songs he had written, and they begin practicing. Hyung turns off the lights and tells Taki, "You need to save electricity. The bill is expensive." Taki thinks, "Even though there's a big difference between us, I feel like you're my big brother. You understand what I want so well. Thank you for everything you're doing, Hyung." Days pass, and they train every day, improving more and more. Taki tells Hyung, "Your voice is great, but your breath support is weak. You need to train these next few days, because we only have 3 days left until the competition." Hyung trains all day, and because he wakes up in his other body, he keeps improving and training non-stop. While he is training in his original body, the girl from earlier walks in and hears him singing. She tells him, "Your voice is amazing," and encourages him to keep going. She even buys him mint tea, saying, "This is to keep your throat from hurting." Then she leaves. He can't believe it. A girl as beautiful as her not only spoke to him, but even bought him mint tea. He thinks, "If I die now, I'll die happy." The next day, he goes to his friends to sing in front of them and show them how much he has improved after all his training. When he sings, they are in shock. They can't believe how much he has improved in just a few days. They tell him, "All right, we're ready to win this competition now." Confident and full of energy, they prepare for what's ahead. That night, Taki and Gil visit the store where Hyung works. Gil has come to apologize to Hyung for stealing from the store in the past. Hyung tells him, "I'm not mad about it. I know you only stole because you were forced to, and I forgive you. Don't carry that guilt anymore." Gil, overwhelmed, says, "I don't even know what to say." He starts telling his story. "I was a failure in school. Everyone bullied me and treated me like a servant. But one day, someone stood by me and became like a brother to me. After that, no one dared to mess with me anymore." Taki adds, "He even stood up to the most dangerous people in school just to help me. At first, I thought he was using me, but then I realized he's a good person. I felt safe with him, and now I'm actually happy." Suddenly, they see Basco standing in front of them. He smirks and says, "Are you sure he helped you without expecting anything in return? Then why did he take money from the old lady at the restaurant?" Hyung quickly explains everything, saying he only took money to pay for her drink, nothing more. In that moment, Basco understands everything and realizes that Hyung isn't the kind of person he thought he was. It's the day of the singing competition. Many students have signed up, and there's a huge crowd watching. This makes Hyung extremely nervous. He's terrified of performing on stage. Then, he sees the girl who had encouraged him when he was singing at the store. He rushes over to talk to her, but she's leaving, clearly uninterested. She says, "Everyone here only cares about appearances. If you think you can convince me to stay just because of how you look, you're wrong. Hyung stops her. Just then, a guy grabs Hyung's hand and says, "Back off if you don't want trouble." But Hyung refuses to leave, so the guy attacks him, knocking him to the ground. Hyung is struggling to move, but as he looks up, Basco shows up and warns the guy, "Try touching him again, and you'll see what happens." The guy suddenly attacks the Basco, but he barely reacts, standing still despite taking a hard hit to the face. The guy is shocked. How did he endure such a punch? He takes off his glasses and says, "Come on, face me properly." Hyung, gathering his strength, stands up to support Basco. Just as he's about to fight, the girl stops them and says, "Let's just leave without causing more problems." The guy listens to her, says, "Fine," and drives away. Later, Basco sits down with Hyung and apologizes for misunderstanding him and treating him poorly. But before they can talk more, they hear the music from the festival, so they leave to watch the performances. The bullies are the first ones to perform. As they pass by Hyung and Taki, they mock them, saying, "Watch and learn." They start singing, and surprisingly, the crowd enjoys their performance. After their performance, they corner Taki and beat him up, saying, "This is just a welcoming gift for entering the competition." Taki struggles to stand, but Hyung rushes over to help him. Just as he's about to retaliate, Taki stops him and says, "Let them have their moment of happiness. It'll make our victory even sweeter." Finally, it's their turn to perform. The moment they step onto the stage, the entire audience chants Hyung's name. He starts singing, but his nerves get the best of him. He forgets the lyrics out of fear. Seeing this, Taki steps forward and begins singing first. His voice is powerful, and the crowd goes wild. Feeling the energy, Hyung gains confidence, recalls his memories, and joins in. The audience is completely captivated by his voice and the emotions in his song. The competition ends, and of course, Hyung wins. The bullies try to downplay his success, saying he only won because of his looks. But the festival's chairman steps in and says, "No, they won because of their talent," cancelling the previous agreement he had with the bullies. After the competition, Hyung and Taki receive their prizes. The chairman approaches Taki and says, "I remember you. I made a mistake by not listening to you when you tried to apply before. But today, I acknowledge your talent." He then pulls out his company business card. Taki thinks he's about to hand it to him, but instead, he gives it to Hyung. "This is my business card. If you want, you can sign with my company right now," he says. Hyung asks, "What about Taki?" The chairman scoffs and says, "You were just a tool to bring out his talent, nothing more." Angry and insulted, Hyung says, "Keep your card. I'm not accepting your offer." Everyone is shocked. He just turned down a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Their song spreads like wildfire, gaining attention all over the world. One day, the girl hears the song and is completely shocked. She had heard Hyung sing that exact song before, when he was working at the store. She whispers to herself, "There's no way he could know that song, unless he's actually him." In that moment, it is revealed that she, just like Young, has been living with two different bodies all along.